Ava, don't confuse a personal hobby with a real career. Playing with wires in the basement isn't a startup. It's a sign that you refuse to grow up. That's what my mother said, while raising her glass to toast Ethan's internship at Goldman Sachs. And me? I was just sitting there, my hand still hovering over a full glass of untouched champagne. If you've ever been dismissed by your own family, if someone's ever mocked your dreams just because they didn't fit their idea of success, stay with me. This story is for you. Because sometimes what they call pointless today becomes the very thing they'll never be able to ignore tomorrow. The chandelier above the private dining room at Carter and Finch cast a warm glow, but it couldn't thaw the chill settling between me and the rest of my family. My champagne glass had been full for over 30 minutes, untouched. Laughter rose around me like a tide I couldn't swim against. Laughter that had nothing to do with me. Ethan was holding court at the head of the table, animatedly recounting how he'd just secured an internship at Goldman Sachs. Dad beamed like someone had just handed him a trophy. "They don't just hand those out, you know," he said, squeezing Ethan's shoulder. "It's a launch pad. The real deal." "Dad," I interjected softly. "I was thinking of starting something of my own. A small venture in consumer robotics." "Oh, honey." Mom cut in before I could finish, dabbing her lips with a cloth napkin. "Don't be impulsive. We already talked about this. You should apply to some real jobs first. Use your degree properly." "I am using it properly," I said, sitting straighter. "I've already prototyped a wearable sensor for elderly patients. It alerts caregivers if they fall or wander." "That's cute," Ethan said, raising an eyebrow. "But Goldman has an AI department too, right? Maybe they'd be more interested in it." Dad chuckled, but not kindly. "Listen, Ava, I know you like building things. You always did. But you need to think about stability. You're not in a garage. This isn't Silicon Valley." I blinked. "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to share what I've been working on." Mom poured herself another glass of Sauvignon Blanc, nodding vaguely. "Speaking of which, Ethan's new girlfriend, Vanessa Green. You remember her dad, Richard Green? The lawyer? He has this amazing townhouse near Lincoln Park. Vanessa's thinking about law school, of course." "I haven't even met her," I muttered. "Oh, you will. She's lovely. So put together." I looked down at my plate. My steak was cold. The room, elegant as it was, felt sterile. Each compliment was barbed wire, each glance a deflection. At some point during dessert, I realized no one had actually asked me how I felt about graduating. The attention never left Ethan. I wasn't even in the background. I was somewhere off stage entirely. My phone buzzed under the table. "Jenna, you okay?" I know that face. "You don't need applause. You build your own stage." I swallowed back the lump in my throat. Jenna always knew. She'd been my roommate, my sounding board, my proof that I wasn't insane for dreaming big. She believed in my prototypes when my professors didn't even bother to read the schematics. "Here," Mom said suddenly, reaching into her purse and handing me an envelope across the table. "Your graduation gift." I opened it with a faint, misplaced hope. Inside, a single printed sheet, a resume template, the kind you could download for free from any career site. "It's clean and professional," she said, sipping her wine. I even added a list of acceptable job titles on the back. Marketing analyst, project coordinator. You know, things that make sense. I stared at the paper, then back at her. "Thanks," I said flatly. Ethan was halfway into a story about Vanessa's family Christmas traditions. Dad leaned in, laughing. No one noticed I stopped speaking entirely. Back at the apartment, I changed into a hoodie and went down to the basement. The air smelled like concrete and possibility. I powered up my old laptop, the one with the cracked hinge I refused to toss, and opened a browser. My hands trembled slightly as I typed, "domain name search." The screen blinked. Nextech.ai. Available. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop that night, typed domain name search, and bought nexttech.ai. The world thought I disappeared. In truth, I was building the future in a $500 a month garage with no heating. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even warm. But it was ours. The garage in Addison reeked of mildew in the summer and turned into an icebox in the winter, but I couldn't have cared less. I had a beat-up desk, 2 space heaters that sometimes worked, and enough wires, breadboards, and half-soldered circuits to start a fire hazard. But we were building something real. I met Izzy at a tech conference 2 months after graduation. We were 2 women standing in the back of a room filled with buzzwords, blazers, and panels about scaling fast from people who'd never touched a line of code. She wore a hoodie with Pseudo Queen on the back and asked a question that made the entire panel squirm. Afterward, we bonded over bad coffee and worse sandwiches. A week later, we were pitching each other startup ideas over whiteboards in that freezing garage. Graduation hadn't given me applause. It hadn't given me a roadmap. But it had given me something else. Freedom. No more seeking permission. No more resumes approved by Susan. Just this mad, electric chase after something bigger. Izzy was the only other person I'd ever met who believed, build first, brag later. We coded 12 hours a day and tested wearable sensor designs with motion tracking. We barely understood at first. Nights blurred into mornings. We pulled apart prototypes like puzzle boxes, chasing every glitch. The first 20 investors we met via Zoom had the same patronizing tone. It's a cute concept, but it's not scalable. Where's your CTO? You two don't really have the look. Sometimes they smiled while saying it. Sometimes they didn't bother. But Jenna kept our spirits alive. She wasn't technical, but she had a PR instinct like a scalpel. She handled our pitch decks, our copy, even cold emailed accelerators in San Francisco and Berlin. When we landed a spot in an early-stage incubator, it was her subject line. What if aging didn't mean isolation? That caught their attention. We launched our first product in 2020. CareLoop, a wearable for seniors that tracked movement patterns and predicted fall risk using AI. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. We emailed everyone we knew to test it. One of those emails went to Richard Bennett. He replied within the hour. Not a fit for our family. Thanks, Ava. It was the first time he'd used my name in years. He still declined. We never put our names on the website. Nexttech's homepage showed looping product demos and testimonials, but the founders page simply said, privately held, female founded, with a black and white photo of the garage we'd outgrown. Jenna served as the interim spokesperson for media. She shielded me from press, interviews, LinkedIn connections. It wasn't fear, it was control. We'd unveil our names when we were untouchable. In 2022, Horizon Capital reached out. They'd seen our data from assisted living centers in Missouri and Florida. Real outcomes, real scalability. After 4 meetings and 2 weeks of diligence, we signed our first real investment. Series A, $4.2 million. The garage became a co-working loft. Izzy finally got her own desk chair that didn't squeak. I sat at my desk late one night, scrolling through my neglected LinkedIn notifications. I wasn't supposed to have an account, but curiosity had won. That's when I saw Ethan's profile. Ethan Bennett, Vice President, FinTech Strategy, Lyons and Morgan Group. His smile was the same, so was the suit. But what made me pause was the single like beneath a congratulatory comment. Vanessa Green. Vanessa. I had heard that name before. But something about it now made my fingers freeze on the keyboard. The invitation didn't mention me by name, just +1, handwritten like an afterthought. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope, thick and self-important. The kind of paper you don't throw away without at least checking the return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Susan's. The swirls on the S in Saturday. The underlined RSVP by March 15th. The implication that I should be grateful, that I should feel included. I tossed it onto my kitchen counter and walked away. I didn't open it again for a week. Jenna called the moment she saw it sitting next to a pile of half-finished code drafts and unopened mail. I still think you should come, she said, her voice firm but kind. Even just to remind them you exist. I don't need their reminder, I muttered. You don't, she agreed. But maybe they do. We stood in front of my closet like we were preparing for battle. Jenna held up a navy jumpsuit. I shook my head. She pulled out a simple black dress with clean lines and no frills. I nodded. No jewelry, just small silver hoops. Nothing flashy. Nothing that said, I'm trying. I wasn't. I just wanted them to see me standing. The Bluebird room was even more extravagant than I remembered. Dark walnut walls, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Chicago skyline, and that distinct hush that hung in expensive places. Like money made the air heavier. I walked in alone. No +1. No name tag. At first, no one noticed. I wove through the room like a ghost, catching glimpses of people I hadn't seen in years. Finance brothers, PR ladies. Some faces I recognized from investor meetings. Lyons and Morgan, Horizon Capital. My stomach twisted. Susan spotted me first. She blinked, processed, then offered a smile 2 seconds too late. Ava, darling, we weren't sure you'd received the invite. I offered the kind of smile you use when you've already won a war no one else knows about. Apparently I did. Richard looked up from his conversation with a man in a tailored navy suit. His expression froze for a breath, then melted into the rehearsed warmth of a politician. Didn't expect to see you here? I know, I said. I didn't explain myself. Ethan was standing near the back, wine glass in hand, mid-story. His face was animated, confident. He was describing the upcoming synergy between Bennett FinTech and Horizon Capital's newest target. I already knew what he was talking about. He didn't. I drifted closer as he spoke, watched him spin empty buzzwords around real things I'd built. Someone handed him a microphone. I stepped back, staying behind a column. A few guests glanced at me, puzzled, but said nothing. Then the door opened again. Vanessa walked in like a woman who expected the room to pause. Blonde hair pinned into an elegant bun, sleek dress that whispered wealth, and a Bluetooth earpiece tucked discreetly under her hair. She was nodding as she entered, lips parted slightly like she was listening intently. I'll let the CEO know we're proceeding with the asset report. Yes, that tech lead file, nexttech.ai. Yes, that's the one. She looked up mid-sentence and saw me. Her feet stopped, one heel slightly raised, lips parted, not in speech now, but in shock. Her gaze flickered from my face to the name card in my hand, then to the table of Horizon Capital executives. A second passed, then another. Wait, Vanessa said, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. Ava, are you the founder? The entire party room fell silent. I didn't need the microphone. Her voice was louder than the music, louder than the lies they told about me. For a moment, no one moved. Even the string quartet faltered, the cello's final note dying midair as if unsure whether to finish. Vanessa stood frozen, staring at me, her question hanging in the air like smoke. Are you the founder of Nexttech? I didn't nod right away. I looked at her, at Ethan, at Richard, at Susan. I looked at the guests turning toward me like I had sprouted wings. Then I gave a small, simple nod. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind over glass. Is it true? That's her? I've seen her before. On Zoom. Someone from Horizon Capital tilted his head. I thought she looked familiar. Another guest murmured, she asked great questions in that Q2 presentation. I thought she was the product lead. Ethan took a slow step forward, glass still in hand, smile pulled too tightly across his face. Everyone, this is my sister Ava. She's very passionate about tech. His voice cracked like old varnish. She's always been good with computers. I said nothing. The air changed. I wasn't just in the room anymore. I had become the room. My presence filled every corner they had once kept from me. The silence I had known for years, building, coding, failing alone, had followed me here. But tonight, it was theirs to hold. Richard attempted a weak chuckle. She was always good with gadgets. Used to take apart the microwave when she was 12. That's funny, said a man standing near the buffet, a Horizon Capital director whose name I hadn't bothered to remember until now. Ava, we're still on for Friday's strategy session, yes? My eyes didn't leave Ethan. Yes, my team's finalized the projections. The director nodded, satisfied, and turned back to his colleagues, already adjusting their mental maps. In a room full of men with suits and plans, it was astonishing how fast power could shift on a single sentence. Ethan blinked. Strategy? Session? Vanessa lowered her champagne flute. Her tone had changed, no longer playful or teasing, but deliberate. You told me you worked with Horizon because you connected the dots. You said they valued your insights. Ethan tried to recover. I did. I do. I'm on the finance side. Ava handles the back end. Another guest interjected with an arched brow. She built the back end, Ethan. The silence now had a temperature, cold and cutting. Susan stepped forward, trying to wrap things in a bow. This is all very lovely, but it's Ethan's night. His engagement. She's not wrong. A woman near the cake table interrupted. I didn't recognize her, but she wore the calm, practiced face of a publicist. Let her speak. I looked toward Jenna, who had arrived minutes earlier and stood by the far wall. She gave a small nod. No drama, no applause. Just a quiet signal. You're here. Say what you need. I'm not here to take anything from Ethan, I said at last. He already took enough. No one breathed. I built Nextech in a garage with no funding, no heating, and no name. I coded the first version by myself. I stayed off the record. Let others think what they wanted. But now you're discussing mergers and equity, and Horizon has a right to know who they're really partnering with. Vanessa turned her head slowly. So, what else did you lie about? They invited me for brunch the next morning. I thought it would be war. Turns out it was worse. Apology with conditions. The restaurant was a glass-walled boutique spot near Lincoln Park. Exposed brick, curated succulents, every table set as if expecting a Vogue photographer to stop by. They'd reserved a private room, of course, because performance demands privacy. Jenna had texted me 10 minutes before I walked in. You don't owe them anything. Speak if you want. Leave if you need. I stared at her message while they stood to greet me like some foreign dignitary. Not daughter, not sister, a potential asset. Susan leaned in for a hug, which I dodged by adjusting my seat. She recovered with a tight smile. Richard cleared his throat like he had something rehearsed and brittle at the back of his tongue. We just wanted a quiet moment, Susan began, stirring her tea without tasting it. Last night, it was surprising, impressive, and perhaps overdue. I said nothing. The only sound was the soft chime of cutlery and the occasional clink of ice in a water glass. Ethan sat to my left, unusually quiet, eyes fixed on the lemon slice in his glass like it held answers he couldn't stomach. Susan tried again. We're sorry you felt overlooked. That word, felt. As if my reality were a misperception, as if 27 years of invisibility had been a mood. I turned my head slowly, not toward Susan, but toward Ethan. His jaw flexed, then stilled. He wouldn't look up. Richard leaned forward. The truth is, Ava, we were surprised by your growth, your execution, your independence. Nextech is clearly on a remarkable trajectory. He laced his fingers like he was giving a boardroom pitch. And if you're at the stage where strategic guidance is needed, financial policy, compliance, investor alignment, I have decades of experience in... I didn't come here to recruit partners. My voice cut through his like glass through honey. I came to return silence with clarity. Silence again, but now it was brittle. Ethan shifted. His voice, when it arrived, was bitter and exhausted. You always wanted to win. Now you did. I looked at him. Not with anger, not even pity. Just a clarity he didn't expect. No, I said. I wanted to belong, but I made peace without you. Susan set down her cup a little too hard. Ava, what happened to you wasn't fair. We were trying to do our best. And now that you're doing so well, we thought maybe there was a way to work together. Smooth things over. Smooth things over, I repeated, as if trying out the phrase. Is that what you called the acquisition offer you and Ethan submitted last quarter through a proxy name? Hawthorne Strategic Advisors, was it? Richard blinked. Ethan's head snapped up. I let the silence hang, then added, we turned it down. Politely, I recognized the language in the term sheet. Dad, you still use the same bullet point formatting you taught me at 16. No one breathed. I stood. You didn't lose a daughter. You lost the chance to know her. They said I needed their legacy, but I built a stage of my own and lit it with everything they tried to dim. The old lecture hall hadn't changed much. Same creaky seats, same humming fluorescents, same chalkboard ghost marks where equations had once lived and died. But today, there were new faces in those seats, younger, bolder, staring up at the podium like it meant something again. I stood where I once sat. Illinois Tech Room 2B. Back then, I was just a girl with calloused fingers and a spiral notebook full of half-finished prototypes. No applause, no investors. Just the thrum of belief buried deep enough to outlast doubt. Now they called me keynote speaker. I wasn't here to impress. I was here to reflect. Jenna sat in the front row, subtle as ever, one AirPod in, typing quietly on her tablet. She gave me a nod before I started. I used to think building something meant building it for them, I said to the room. Parents, teachers, the people who sit at holiday dinners pretending to cheer you on. But sometimes, you build because no one else will. There was a stillness. Not the bored kind. The listening kind. I didn't list my resume. They could Google it. I didn't show slides. I gave them fragments of freezing garage nights, of rejected pitch decks, of being mistaken for my assistant, of starting Next Tech not as a company, but as an answer. Afterward, a girl in the second row raised her hand. Her voice barely cut through the room. What would you tell someone whose family doesn't believe in them? I held her gaze. That silence can be fuel, if you use it right. And belief? It doesn't have to start with them. It can start with you. Applause didn't explode. It built, quiet, respectful, the kind that mattered. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Jenna slipped a small USB drive into my hand. It's all on here, she said. The party, the brunch, even Ethan's term sheet, in case you ever want receipts. I turned it over in my fingers, silver, weightless, like a souvenir from a storm that had already passed. I'm not posting it, I said. I didn't think you would, Jenna replied. Just thought you might want to remember how far you've come. I tucked it into my bag next to my notes. Not revenge, just record. As I stepped off the stage, a student reached out and touched my arm. Barely a brush, but enough to make me pause. Thank you, she said, for being visible. I smiled. Funny? They thought I disappeared, but I've never been more here. They once called her the basement girl, too small to be seen, too strange to be heard. But silence, when wielded with purpose, became her greatest weapon, and the truth she carried cracked open every illusion they built. Justice didn't come with applause. It arrived with clarity, power, and a name they tried to erase. Like the final chord of a forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But once heard, it cannot be unheard. Sometimes the loudest revolution begins with the decision not to disappear. If you've ever been the invisible one in your own family, overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside for not following their script, drop a comment below. Like this video if you've ever worked in silence, hoping someone would finally see you. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the ones they ignore are the ones who rewrite the ending.